So this is a continuation of lesson 13.3. The first part was I can create histograms. So you were really just learning about how to make the histogram. Today we're going to work more on the understanding the information in the histogram. So our learning target for today is I can estimate statistics from data displayed in a histogram. I can estimate statistics from data that's displayed in a histogram. And we're really going to be focusing on Math Practice 1. If you take a look at Math Practice 1, that's making sense of the problem and persevering through it. Definitely a lot of sense making today, okay? Does it make sense? Does that look right? How would I figure this out? Making a plan, carrying it out, and then really sticking with it is the persevere part. Some of it does get a little bit lengthy. The histogram that we're going to use today as an example is this one, okay? This histogram is the ages of the U.S. Senators at the start of the 112th Congress. So at the beginning of the 112th Congress, they went through, they looked at all the senators, and they collected the ages of those senators, and they made it into a histogram. Now, the first part of this lesson the other day was I can create histograms. If I gave you all the ages and said, okay, make this histogram, that would have been the learning target from the other day. Today's learning target is about I can estimate some statistics from this data. So what we're actually going to do is we want to estimate the mean and the median. Now, I said estimate, and I mean estimate. We actually can't find the mean or the median based on a histogram. Because we don't have actual values, we don't know every single person's actual age, we only know the intervals that they fall in, we're not going to be able to find the exact mean and median. So we're just estimating. But here's the thing. We're not going to just guess. We're not going to just look and go, I think it's about this. We can make a prediction that way, but we're going to estimate more mathematically than just that. Okay? So we're going to start with the mean. And I'm going to show you how to go about finding an estimate for the mean for this histogram. Okay? The first thing that we want to do is find the midpoint of each interval. So we're going to find the middle or the midpoint of each of those intervals. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 intervals in this histogram. Now, once we know the midpoint, which will be kind of the middle age of that interval, we're going to take that number and we're going to multiply it by the frequency. So we're going to multiply it by the frequency. Once we know the middle age of the interval, we'll multiply it by how many people were in that interval. Okay? Once we know that total, what we're going to do is add those results. We'll add all those results together and then divide by the total number of values. Now, adding all the results and dividing by the total number of values That should sound familiar, right? That's how we find a mean. So what we're doing is we're finding the middle of the interval, like the middle age of each one. We're going to multiply it by how many people there are in that area. And then we'll add all that up and divide it by how many people there are to get the mean. So let me show you how this would look. I said that there were 6 intervals. So we'll call them first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Okay. In the first interval is from ages 30 to 39. Now, from 30 to 39, I want to find the midpoint, or the middle of that. The middle of 30 to 39 is 34.5, right? So 34.5 is the middle of that interval. Now, there were 2 people that fell in that interval. So the frequency of it is 2. So this is the average age of that interval, and there were 2 people in that interval. So altogether, 34.5 years times the 2 people would give me 69 years of age, right? What I'm going to do is go through and find all of these values. Once I know all those values, I'm going to add them up and then divide by how many values there were. So I'll do one more for you. The middle of the second interval, 40 to 49, that would be 44.5 years old, right? That's the middle of that interval. And there were 10 people in that range. So there's 10 people that are approximately, on average, 44.5 years old. So altogether, that'd be 445 years of age. Go through and figure out the rest of those, and then we'll see if we can find the mean. So for the third one, that would be 54.5. And there are 30 people that fall into that category. That would be 1,635 years for those 30 people on average. The midpoint here is 64.5 years, and there are 37 people that fall into that age bracket. That's 2,386.5 years for those 37 people. 74.5 years for 18 people gives me 1,341. And 84.5 is the midpoint times only 3 people, and that is 253.5 years. Now, before we actually find the mean, I would ask you to kind of make an educated guess about where you think it would be. Math Practice 1 is about making sense of it. If you just look at the histogram, where do you think the mean should be? So my guess would be in the mid to lower 60s, okay, because there's so many people in that age bracket. Looks like there is a bunch above, a bunch below, probably more below, so maybe the lower 60s. And that's really that Math Practice 1 making sense. If I don't get a number in that area, I know I probably have a mistake. So now let's add all these together, all these years, and it is 6,130 years. Now that's an estimate of about how old all these people are. I need to divide that by the 100 people or senators. If you add up all the frequencies, there's 100 senators. And if you do that, you get approximately 61.3 A 0.3 of a year is kind of awkward because it's lower than 5. I think I'm just going to round it down. And it's only because we're talking about years old. If it was something else, we could maybe leave the decimal. So I'm going to say about 61 years old, which is pretty much what we thought. We thought it'd be in the 60s and maybe on the lower end. So as far as making sense of the problem, I think we were pretty right on. So the other thing that we needed to find is an estimate for the median. Okay. Remember that our learning target is we're estimating statistics from a histogram. Okay. So here's our data again, same story about the senators. To get the median, what we're going to have to do is we're going to estimate the average of the two middle numbers. Two middle numbers, two middle values. The first thing that we need to know, remember the median is finding the number in the middle. We're looking for the age in the middle. If we had to make an estimate, where do you think the median would be? So our estimate is that it's going to be probably in the 60s again, maybe on the low end. We'll come back and kind of talk about the estimate again. Here's the first thing that we need to know. We know that there were 100 people total, 100 senators total. So if we're talking about finding the middle age, we know that the 50th person on the list and the 51st person on the list, we want to know what's in the middle, right? That would be 50 people in the lower half, 50 people in the upper half. So we want to know the age of the 50th person, the age of the 51st person, and then figure out what's in the middle. The only issue is we don't know actual ages. So we're going to do a lot of estimating. If you take a look at these intervals, we have to figure out where would the 50th person be? Where would the 51st person be? So if you look here, how many people were here? 2. And here there were 10, so that's 12. And here there's 30. So that's 42 people in the first 3. So the 50th and the 51st person are definitely in the red. Agreed? So our 50th person and our 51st person are definitely in the 60 to 69 interval, which is good because that's what we picked as our estimate, right? That it was somewhere in there, so that we're right on target for now. Now, if there were 42 in this lower one, how far into the red do we need to go? So intervals 1 through 3 was 42 people. But we want the 50th person. So we want to be 8 and 9 people into the blue. So we want to know the 8th person and the 9th person into the blue. And then we want to figure out what's in the middle of them, right? Because we're trying to do the median. So we are really looking at what would 8.5 into the blue be for an age, right? What would 8.5 into the blue be for an age? Sorry, not into the blue, into the red. How did I get blue on there? My apologies. Into the red. So we have to figure out how far into the red is that. Now the red has a width of 10 years. Okay? But the red also has, what, 37 people in it. We want to know 8.5 people into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 8.5 divided by 37. There's 37 total people in the red. We want 8.5 people into the red. We want to know how far that would be. Now, 8.5 divided by 37 is 0.2297. Let's just make that into a percentage. Let's make it 23%. We want to be 23% into the red. Does that make sense? There's 37 people in the red, but we only want to know 8.5 into the red. That's 23% into the red. So we have to figure out what age would that be. Okay, what age would that be? 23% of 10 years, because that's how big the red is. Red is 10 years. 23% of 10 years is 2.3 years into the red. So if we're looking at 8.5 people into the red, that's 23% into the red. 23% of the 10 years is 2.3 years into the red. Now the red starts at 60. So 60 years plus the 2.3 years is 62.3 years. And 0.3 is kind of strange for years. So we're going to say that the median would be about 62 years old. And does that make sense? It should, because that's about what our estimate was, right? If you take a look, you know it's probably going to be in the red because there's so many. But look, there's more in the green. So you know it's going to be kind of towards the bottom of that. So 62 years old is the approximate estimated median for these senators.